Zdravo, everyone. That's the way someone who knows the ancient language of Macedonian would greet you. It means hello. Welcome to Chapter 3, where we're going to talk about multicultural and bilingual aspects of special education. On our first slide, you can click and learn many different ways to say hello. So just for fun, spend a few minutes doing that. You can click on the different languages. A little box will pop up in the upper left-hand corner, and you can hit play and hear people speak these various languages. Come to class prepared to greet me in one of the languages that you enjoyed. Yes, today we're going to talk about English language learners, and there are some acronyms that you need to know if you're not already familiar with them. You'll see these terms in schools quite frequently. ESL, English as a second language. ESOL means English speakers of other languages, or ELL, English language learners. And schools have many different programs for students for whom English is not their native language. You'll see them, people coming here from all over the world to our beloved Palmetto State. And for many of them, it will be the first opportunity they have to learn to speak English, especially speaking English to people with a southern dialect that many of the people in this class have. Generally speaking, an English language learner student has been in the U.S. less than 3 years and is not fluent in English. The person probably understands or comprehends more spoken English than we might realize, and they will understand and read more English than they will speak. Many times, folks who are not fluent in English are afraid to talk out, especially in class, by answering or asking questions because they feel that their peers may laugh at them. Some of the programs available use different ways to try to help children learn. Many districts who do not have enough money to have teachers who can speak various languages may use what's called the immersion technique, sink or swim. In other words, we're going to take you, doesn't matter if you're 5 years old or 15 years old, and we're just going to put you in a regular class. And you're going to have to try to pick up on the English the best you can. And we may be able to provide someone to tutor you a few minutes every day on words in English. We may have a computer program that you can use to help you learn English. We may give you a dictionary that translates from your language to English or something like that, but they really don't have a very well planned out program, and a lot of times it's due to the lack of money or lack of training for the teachers. Some children will come though and be in bilingual classes. Ideally, in that class, the teacher would speak the child's native language as well as English, and so some parts of the lesson would be taught in their native language and then other parts in English. However, you have to realize in most schools, you're fortunate in our area to have someone who speaks probably either Spanish or French. And that's about it in many schools, especially out in the rural areas. So it's hard for them to have a bilingual class for someone who speaks any variety of the over 2,000 languages there are. So you may have a child who's in an English as a second language class where the teacher speaks Spanish, but that child speaks, German. And so they have to try to learn the English the best way they can. Also tutoring. Some districts are able to provide tutoring. They may or may not have a teacher who speaks the child's native language, or they may be able to bring in a tutor from out in the community who understands the child's native language and can help him or her to learn English more rapidly. And again, computer programs are wonderful, and a lot of students have picked up on English from that and watching American television. Other help, there may be some kind of a pull-out class, and when I use the term resource, that does not mean special ed resource, okay? So remember that, does not mean special education resource, but a class where 4 or 5 children who speak, let's say Spanish, are in one homeroom, and then they go out to a class where they work on learning more English words, in particular for a certain number of minutes a day. Here's a little extra credit activity for you. If you look in your textbook on pages 52 through 56, you should be able to get ideas on how to answer number 1 and number 2, so you can pause anytime you wish and go ahead and find some examples and find your answers and be able to support your answers by what you find in the textbook. Bring that in to the next class for me, and you'll get a little bit extra credit. Next slide. How do we assess children who come to us who do not speak much English? Well, first we have to collect data. And there are tests that can be given. There are screening tests and things. And some of those are very simple. I've administered some of them before to children myself, where you go in, you have the child in a room, and you give the child simple commands in English, such as, okay, stand up, sit down, walk over there and pick up the book. Write your name on the top of the paper. Number 1 through 5 on your paper. Put an X by number 2. And so forth. So you're given simple commands. Why? You're trying to see if the child is going to be able to follow directions in the classroom. Because again, the child may understand some verbal words, although the child won't speak. Also, it's only fair. And don't you love Superman down there? Fairness and equality, the American way. We need to help these children learn English as soon as possible, so we want to give them fair tests and be able to help them be successful in the class for however long they may be with us. Also, some tests have cultural biases, so the test administrators have to be very careful about what they're doing. There are tests that can be given to children who are nonverbal, or children who do not speak the language of the test giver, or the language the test is in, but there are nonverbal tests that can also be used. But mostly it's school psychologists who know how to administer those. Again, the child may not need special education, the child just needs to learn English. And what about gifted children who are also English language learners? Well, we go back to the assessment issue. If the child cannot be properly tested, it is sometimes difficult to know how well the child can do in academics. Most English language learners do fairly well in math if they had a good background in math in their native countries, because of course it's symbols, so it's easier for them to follow than some written directions written in standard English. And so those language barriers may keep the child from doing well. If the child grew up in a country that had the majority of its citizens in a very low income bracket, it may be that there weren't even schools for the child to attend, or the parent may not have had the money to pay for the child to get a school uniform, or to pay for the child to go to school, which happens in many places. Therefore, children never get to go to school. And so that's a sad situation, but it does happen here, and the child comes here and is expected to go to school right away, even though they've had no education prior to coming here. However, many of the children who come to America from other countries come from middle class and more affluent families. Many of them may speak better English than we do, so obviously they don't need help from an English as a second language teacher. Teachers need training. They need to develop cultural awareness, cultural sensitivity, and tolerance for people from other countries. Some terms that we may use in a joking manner, or some gestures we may use, may be offensive to people in other cultures. For example, many people in Japan are familiar with American customs. However, if you were to go to Japan, it would be appropriate for you to realize that if I meet someone in Japan, I should bow. Shaking hands in the country of Japan is viewed as you are passing germs on to someone else. Although in the business world, people do shake hands because they've become more Americanized, if you will, many people who live there still do not see this as something that is socially acceptable. We also need to learn tolerance for other people's food, attire, and culture. Sometimes children in school get picked on because they bring food from home to eat. I talked one time with a young man from India, and he said he would eat school lunches even though he qualified for free lunch. Well, why is that? I asked. The food just doesn't taste right, and he shook his head. It does not taste good because they're used to very, very spicy food, and American food is quite bland to their taste buds. And so students might pick at them because they see what they eat smells different or looks different than the food that American-born students are used to. So we have to work with our students to let them realize, it's okay. And you can do things like have that student's parent come in and maybe prepare a dish for the class to share and let the children realize, hey, this is just something new. It's something different, and maybe I should try it. I just might like it. Or share recipes with parents who might be interested in expanding their cooking repertoire. Anything like that can help, as well as things like explaining holidays from other countries, letting your student explain what things are like over in Sweden. What holidays do we have that you don't have here? What do we think is important? What kind of music do we like? And all those things would interest children, especially teenagers, I think, in the area of music and dance. Okay, next class. You need to bring your wireless device if you have a laptop or some device like that, or smartphone to class. And we're going to use the info that you see on this website below. So you'll need to have your smartphone or device ready so that you can load that, and we'll be looking at what we see on these statistics data links.